Are we good? Ooh. Pretty hot. We just started? That's good. Hello, everybody. Thank you for all those many that attended in person, and for all those watching online, and for those watching perhaps a couple of weeks from now. Welcome. This is our first Capital Project Community Forum. My name is Brendan Carty. I am a member of the Cornwall Board of Education. I'm also the chair of the Communications Committee, which is the committee that puts on these events. I just want to do some brief introductions. I'm joined on the dais by our interim superintendent, Meg Virginio, our assistant superintendent for business, John Fink, the chair of our facilities committee, Jim Cragen, and also other communication committee member, Lofton Reiser, and also a quick shout to Jamie Fox, our other communication member who could not make it tonight for a work commitment. So tonight we're going to go through, there's going to be a lot to cover. I want to talk broadly about what's going to be in this upcoming capital project and kind of set the stage for what the next couple of months are going to entail. We want to answer the biggest question of why are we doing another capital project? What projects are being considered? We sent out a community survey over the last few weeks, and we have the results of that, and we're going to share those. We're going to talk about what the next steps are, both in the next couple of weeks and then also really the next couple of months as we get closer to the vote, which, if everything goes according to plan and everything stays on track, gets approved, the community would vote on May 19th. So give you a sense of what that path is going to look like. And then we're going to open the floor to Q&A. We'll have questions. Anybody in the audience that wants to ask a question, we'll provide our best answer. We also have questions that were submitted through the survey, and time allowing, we'll go through some of those and answer as many as we can. Okay, so we'll start at the very high level. Why another capital project? I know some people might be thinking to themselves hey, this kind of looks familiar. I even recognize some of the fonts in this presentation. Didn't you just do this a few years ago? And yes, we did. That was 2022, so 4 years ago now. Here's some of the best ofs from that go around. It was a $23.8 million capital project, did not increase taxes. It passed with a great majority, and it did a lot of important work throughout the district. A lot of those projects you could probably see if you drop your kids off, you see at the high school. It was a lot of pent-up needs that were addressed. But you may ask yourself, well, $23.8 million, that's a lot of money. How do you need to do so much more only 4 years later? And there are really two big reasons why we are pursuing this second capital project. Number one, despite the fact that we just did one, we have a lot of needs around the district still. We're going to go through those in a second. The second reason is we've been planning for this. All along, the plan was to do more capital projects. We'll talk more about why, but there were so many needs throughout the district that we always knew that one project was never going to be enough. And if you followed these presentations 4 years ago, you'll recall that this was discussed, and it was always meant to be the first step down a much longer path towards reinvesting in our facilities. I want to start with reason number one, though. We have a lot of needs around this district, and I want to just give you a sense of how many needs we have. So first of all, a little process point. After we completed the $23 million capital project, we had another building condition survey done in 2025. So every 5 years, districts have to go through this process of having a building conditions survey. They identified many, many needs that were not addressed in that capital project. What is a building condition survey? It's done by a third party, so your architectural firm, And they'll come in and basically give fresh eyes around your buildings and say, create a list of things that you really need to tackle. This was the result of that survey. This is just the high school. I'm not going to go through line by line. We'll go through a more granular look at the projects in a minute. But this was the high school, identified almost $17 million of projects at the high school. This is the middle school, even longer, $30.1 million of needs. Cornwall Elementary, 10.5. Willow, 7.3. COH, 7. Buildings and Grounds, District Office, rounding it out to almost $78 million of needs identified in that building condition survey even after the capital project. The fact is, a capital project is the only way that you can address this amount of work in a timely, cost-effective manner. One of the questions that we got from the survey, and this comes up in different forms fairly often, you shouldn't have to do capital projects because you should be investing in your facilities every year. And the fact is, if we were to address these large level projects out of our operating budget, you have to remember, our operating budget is well over 50%. Keep me honest, it's between 70 and 80% is your programming and people, it's salaries. So if you were to pay for a large project out of your operating budget, you would have to let people go, frankly. Like some meaningful line out of your budget would have to come out, and nobody wants that. If you were to increase, if you were to add it on top of it, it would be such a dramatic tax increase that you would need a supermajority to pass it. The community probably wouldn't be able to afford it, et cetera, et cetera. So capital projects are set up to encourage school districts to tackle their large-scale capital investments this way. There are financial incentives to doing so, and from a process standpoint, it just makes more sense to do all of these in a bundle because you get architectural firms and construction management firms to streamline the work, and it's just much more efficient. Now, you may ask yourself, well, go back to that, the idea of, we did 23.8 in 2022. I just want to remind people, before we had done that capital project, the previous capital project we did was passed in 1999 to build the high school. So 23 years went by without a major capital project approved in this district. And that didn't invest in the other 4 academic buildings. It just built the high school. History before that gets murkier when there was even large-scale investments in these buildings. Point is, the buildings are old. They had not gotten large-scale work in multiple decades, and we are just now digging out of that hole. But we are making significant and meaningful progress, and this is part of that. Okay, reason number 2, we've been planning for this. So in the spring of 2022, when we passed the capital project, there was something else on that ballot. We asked the community to approve a new $5 million capital reserve fund. The community did approve that. As a reminder, a capital reserve fund is essentially a savings account that is separate from your operating budget that allows school districts to save for large capital improvements. Many of the capital improvements qualify for state aid up to almost 75%. So every dollar in your capital reserve fund would be matched by roughly $3 from the state on those qualifying projects. I say qualifying projects, you can't just pay for anything out of the capital reserve fund. You can't, another thing that came up, you can't add programming, for instance. It has to be something that is tied to your physical facility. And even then, to qualify, that facility needs to be tied to instruction, essentially. Much more complicated formula, but that's the gist. But if you match all of those, if you hit all that criteria, it's a great deal. State kicks in $3 for every dollar that you have sitting in that capital reserve fund. So If you have a fully funded $5 million capital reserve fund, that will be matched by roughly $15 million in state aid, which allows you to fund a roughly $20 million capital project without raising taxes. If this sounds familiar, because this is the formula we used last time. It ballooned to 23.8 because we had some expiring debt that was coming off the books, which is a theme that you might want to pin for later because we will get to that. This time around, though, we're doing something more. So not only do we have the fully funded $5 million capital reserve fund that we opened in 2022, which puts us in the same position that we were for that capital project, but in the spring of 25, we asked the community to approve an additional $5 million capital reserve fund. It is currently about halfway full with $2.5 million, which means with our roughly 3-to-1 aid ratio, that 2.5 in this new capital reserve fund will be matched by up to $7.5 million in state aid. If your eyes are glazing over because this is so much math, let's break it down in review. Once this clicker, what am I standing in front of? There we go. Okay. So in review, we've got that capital reserve fund from 22, $5 million. That's full. Capital reserve fund from 25, $2.5 million. Total capital reserves, $7.5 million. We multiply that by 3 for state aid, and we get $30 million in purchasing power, which is more than we had the last time we did this in 2022, which is great. This is the ability to tackle a $30 million capital project without raising taxes. But what? There's even more. This is hardly possible. So if you remember, I just mentioned it, back in 1999, the community approved a $44.6 million capital project to build Cornwall Central High School. The school district has been paying this debt each year since. In recent years, that means something to the tune of about $3.5 million in debt service each year. In 2030, that debt will be paid in full. We will no longer be paying for the high school, which means the school district will free up about $3.5 million per year in its budget, which it can allocate towards capital improvements. This dramatically increases our purchasing power, which will allow us to fund a capital project of up to $55 million without raising taxes. 2030 is significant. It would align almost perfectly with the schedule for this capital project, because if it were approved in the spring of 26, in this May, it would take a few years before we were actually issuing those bonds. And at that point, the high school bonds fall off. This one kicks in, which would allow you to maintain that same level of spending, so that same tax levy, essentially. So you'd get much more, you'd be investing in new projects without having to increase what you're getting from the community. Okay, so we have $55 million space to do about $55 million of work without increasing taxes. That's great. But like we said, there's more than $55 million of work to do. So this is where the projects themselves become important. So what projects are being considered? All of them. So that's, remember that big old BCS report, Building Condition Survey? There it is. And there's a lot on there. And we're considering all of them. So give you a little insight into the process. There's the Facilities Committee in conjunction with administration, principals in each building, the Building and Grounds itself, our Department of Building and Grounds here in the district, our architects, our construction managers, have organized the projects into 2 general groups. Tax neutral proposition, like what can we do without raising taxes, essentially, and then tax increase propositions, other things that we could do which would be beyond that kind of tax neutral umbrella, but may be worth doing as well. And we're going to talk through them. And I want to clarify, I'll say this over and over again. Nothing has been decided yet. That's why we're having forums and surveys and all of that. We're trying to get a sense of what what the community wants to, would support. And we want to, we're very sincerely taking that information in, and this is part of it. Okay, so the tax neutral proposition. This is where we get kind of in the weeds on the buildings and the different needs. Last time I did this, it skipped ahead several slides. There it is. Messing with my flow. Okay, so the tax neutral proposition is a combination of necessary building repairs, site work, and renovations that would address long-standing critical needs while improving the safety and sustainability of our buildings, which sounds great, but what does that mean? At the high school, I don't want to go through everyone line by line, but real quick hitters. Construct bathrooms and concession stands next to the tennis courts. That one requires a bit of explanation. So when we did the multi-sport athletic facility at the high school last time, we did not include this item, the bathroom and concession stands. We have to build that. The state education department will not allow us to build anything else until we build that. So they will literally not approve this project unless we include that. So we are, and it's also bathrooms and concession stands are a good idea. So we don't have to be convinced, but that is why that is listed right there, right off the bat. Some other projects: replace the pavers at the front entrance, repair some roof sections, replace floor decks. That's the retaining wall near the bridge. If you're familiar with the high school, the bridge is what goes from essentially the lobby to the library. Install magnetic hold opens at remaining bathrooms. This is stuff that, just wear and tear has just deteriorated over time. These last two are important, and you'll see them on different buildings. Replace the entire fire alarm system and replace the PA system. Those, aside from the concession stands, are the two most expensive items here. It is very important to understand these are safety measures. Obviously, the fire alarm, it's easy to connect that to safety, but even the PA system, these systems are old. There are entire days where they are spotty, don't work at all. Just imagine the vulnerability that a building is in and all of the occupants are when you cannot communicate through the PA system throughout the day, or you cannot communicate reliably. This is a big safety issue, and which is why you will see this item listed in all but one of the buildings, I believe, or to some extent all the buildings. Not a replacement in all the buildings, but it's a line item in all five. All right, middle school. There's some big items here, which I'll go through in more detail, but pave the rear service road and build a new parent drop-off. That's the second biggest item. So if you recall, or if you are familiar with the middle school, there's that whole road in the back that's not really a road. It's kind of gravel. People go on it anyway. That's what we're referring to there. Paving that entire thing and then building a new parent drop-off in the rear of the building, so that currently you have buses and parents dropping off in the front of the building in the morning, which if you've ever sat in line there, you understand how not ideal that is. So this would be taking the parent portion, moving it to the back of the building, only having buses go in the front of the building so that you would alleviate that traffic. You would make it safer for those that are jumping out of their car. Let's say your parent pulls up and you don't want to wait, and the entrance is right there. It's so tempting, and you just jump out of your car, but here comes another car and here comes a bus, and it's kind of the Wild West. Not ideal. This would take that parent traffic, put it in the back, keep the buses up front where things can remain orderly. I'll show you some pictures that'll make it a little clearer in a second. That bus loop, repaving that. Walter Moran, who's our head of buildings and grounds, director of buildings and grounds, that hasn't been paved in 30 some odd years. So if you're familiar with this building, CES, we're at Lee Road, this similar project was on the last capital project. It had not been paved in 30 some odd years too. So the time for the middle school is up. and replacing the sidewalks. Apparently, those are even older. The rest of these, moisture penetration. If anyone owns a home, you know how it gets your attention when water is getting into your house. That is a drop what you're doing and fix it kind of issue. Same here at the middle school, replacing the water service and backflow preventer, just another necessary repair. Replacing the sanitary sewer line, replacing the D-wing roof for similar reasons as listed above. Here's another big item, kitchen and cafeteria addition. I'm going to go through this visually in a second. This is part of a larger reimagination of the middle school space. This would be, I'm not even going to talk about where it is because we have a picture that will explain it. I'm just going to repeat myself. As part of this, we would also renovate the existing kitchen, convert that to classroom space, build staff bathrooms, both male and female, provide some gutter downspout support to address, again, another moisture issue, install drainage, another moisture issue, replace dated mop receptors, which I will admit I don't know what that means, but it has been explained to me, and at the time I know it made sense. I have since forgotten. Replace the fire alarm system. It's one of the smaller items on this list, so forgive me. Replace the fire alarm system and the PA system here as well. So again, more safety, water and safety issues are kind of themes here. Now I want to get back to that the pavement and drop off. So the day before we were buried in multiple feet of snow, I went out and I took these pictures, and it looks like just a long time ago. But this is if you're standing in the Lee Road parking lot, this is the view. You're looking back at it. Again, it's kind of a road. Is it a road? Not sure. It's not meant for, it was never designed for what it's being used for today. It was always meant to be a service road, but it gets used by parents. It gets used by athletic teams. It's just used whenever it's available to be used, which in my mind is kind of like water finding its level. Like the people that attend the middle school or any middle school event understand that only going in through the front is not always a feasible way of accessing this school. So almost nature has tried to force its way in through the back. And this road is just not built for that. This is a gravelly, it looks as if it has taken like shrapnel fire if you go up and down it. It is a very rough road. Again, calling it a road is being generous. And it leads here. This is in the back. It's another parking lot area. This is where we would be building. First of all, we would be repaving all of this so it is a functioning road that is built for the amount of traffic that it is already getting. But then it would be functional enough to take on even more traffic so that we could build this. This is an overhead rendition of that road starting on the bottom left. That's the entrance from Lee Road. Then it wheels all the way around. Again, this imprint is already there. It's just kind of gravel and dirt in most of those places, as you just saw. And then it hooks around, approaches the building. And that last shot you saw, that little parking lot, that's where we would build the rear drop-off point. So now parents could come in through this back road in the morning for something that is purpose-built for exactly this, drop their kids off at the back, wheel around that little loop that you see on the top right, and then come back around exactly as they came in the other lane. So this would be more efficient. It would be safer than all of the cars and buses cramming into a small space up front. And it would, again, make a road that is already being kind of used already much safer and more efficient and built for that purpose. Now, you'll also see there's a large red, we called it in the very early parts of planning the blob, but it is the one that is marked $9.2 million. This is the proposed cafeteria addition. And then on the bottom right of the building itself, you see that blue section, it's kind of looks like an L or like a little Tetris block. That's That's where the existing cafeteria and kitchen are now. There's a lot of reasons why we would want to replace the cafeteria and kitchen. We'll start with the existing one. It is in structurally not great shape. The floor of the kitchen has a lot of issues. It has been recognized it would need to be overhauled completely anyway in order to keep it functional. So the discussion was, if we're going to completely overhaul this, that creates a lot of problems, because you can't have your cafeteria completely offline for really at any point, certainly not for an entire year, roughly, that it would take to fix it. So you would have to find some alternate space to feed your students. And there's another wrinkle to this. The middle school cafeteria is also used to supply meals to the other schools. Fill me in on COH and Willow, which adds to not only the burden of the cafeteria, but also the impact of taking it offline. So we know we have to do something drastic to the existing cafeteria. We can't just take it offline without a replacement. So then the thought became, why don't we just build a replacement at the middle school, which you can build that while the other existing cafeteria is still functioning. And then when that's done, you'd have all of this extra space in the existing cafeteria, which you can now turn into educational space, instruction space, classrooms. So it doesn't only become an added benefit for the facilities. You have a larger cafeteria, more modern cafeteria, which is great and a huge benefit. But now it also funnels back into your instruction. You get more instructional space, which, as anyone who works in schools or is associated with schools, that's the ultimate goal. Whenever you can add instructional space, that becomes very attractive. So that's the explanation of those two items and how they're connected. And again, another explanation of that rear service road bus loop. Okay, that brings us to Cornwall Elementary. Similar themes here. I don't want to go too deep, but a lot of backflow preventers, additional fencing at the playground, repaving driveways from Lee Road. That's the road that you come on right when you come in. That would be tied to the rear service road project. It would kind of be all done at the same time. There's some classroom upgrades that would be made here to a particular classroom to make it more functional. Replacing stairwell and cafeteria doors. That's a safety thing. Fire doors are needed. Replacing the curtain wall at the bridge corridor. If you're familiar with this building, it goes from the office there on the left side of the building when you enter the main entrance. It's the little bridge that takes you from the office area to the classrooms in the back. Address chimney deterioration. Replacing cafeteria and stairwell doors with fire-rated doors and frames. And then again, the fire alarm system and PA system at the school as well. Willow Avenue, a lot of the same work. There's some roof work that hasn't been touched. 1972 roof addition. So that's beyond its usable life. I mean, if you're approaching, God, how many? My math is failing me. That's 54 years. I'd say that's time. Replacing the gym floor, reinforcing the composite slab under the kitchen, adding air conditioning to the auditorium. These are old buildings, and you don't feel that any more powerfully than when you're sitting there on a late spring day, wishing there was air conditioning during an assembly. And replacing the PA system here as well. Cornwall on Hudson, replacing the sprinkler compression system. I don't want to get too technical, but this is all stuff in the kitchen. Adding air conditioning to the auditorium again. Another backflow preventer for moisture issues. Bathrooms, and again, that PA system. District office. This is one of the oldest buildings in our district as well. Needs just a lot of upgrades. It's not ADA accessible. A lot of these, it has really not been addressed in the recent capital project and a lot of other work, because frankly, we always funnel that money towards academic space. What's that? Oh, I did. Yeah. No, that's next. That's next. No, maybe I did. Yeah, I did double tap. It's easy to miss. It's just the one. So installing the 4-bay garage. This is interesting. It came up during the capital project community survey questions portion that the district should do a better job of maintaining what it has. And this is exactly what this is. So the 4-bay garage would be used to protect our service vehicles, essentially, that help maintain our facilities from things like, winter storms that drop 2 feet of snow on the ground. So this would be an investment in long-term cost efficiency, essentially, and the kind of thing that would pay for itself. Okay, so that's the tax-neutral portion. All of that work I mentioned totals about $44.5 million, which you might be saying, didn't you say $55 million before? I did. So we would likely add another project to this tax-neutral portion. We did not get from our financial advisors the final calculation on 55 until literally this past week. So more on the theme of like, this is all being built, we're in the process of putting this all together, and this is why we want to have this input. But this is good news. So we would likely be able to take another $10 or so million from projects you're about to see and put this into the, quote, tax neutral proposition. We just don't know what that is yet, and frankly, we're interested in taking the public's pulse on what that would be. Okay, so what are those tax increase propositions? In these propositions, we could add classroom space to our elementary and middle schools. We could improve our athletic fields, or we could do both. First, I want to talk about the classroom additions. So here at Cornwall Elementary School, we would add 8 classrooms in what's called a 4 on top of 4 extension to relieve space. If you're familiar with this building, that would probably instantly make sense. The classrooms are all stacked in 2 floors. Top floor mirrors the bottom floor, so it would be 4 classrooms up top, 4 classrooms down below. I'll show you a rendering of where that would be in a second. That addition would be just south of $12 million. In Cornwall on Hudson, it would be in addition to the cafeteria and renovating the current space. Kind of a similar idea in a way to the middle school concept, but at a much smaller scale. So during that renovation, you'd get additional space. That would be $2 million. At the middle school, we would be connecting the B and the C wings. Again, I'll show you what this looks like. And in the process, adding space for 3 classrooms. It would also improve the flow of the building. That would be just north of $7 million. This is where it would be this is an overhead shot of the building we are currently in, Cornwall Elementary School. So that is if you're in the parking lot, or if you're in the baseball fields, the softball fields out back, this would be kind of jutting in that direction. And again, that would be 4 classrooms up top and 4 classrooms below. Just a word on CES. This is we mentioned in the previous slide, it would relieve some space issues. My daughter is in 7th grade now. When she entered kindergarten, I remember it was a big thing like 2 weeks before the school year when they had to add, they had 4 classes per grade. And it was so crowded. They were like, oh man, the student to teacher ratio is going to be way off, and at the very last minute, they added a 5th class. Everyone was just like, hallelujah. And there was an exception because I think at the time, and Megan would know this, there might have been one other grade in CES that had 5 classes, but it was the norm to have 4. Seeing it from the board perspective and as a father's perspective, every year since, we have been adding another teaching position here at CES. I've seen both of my daughters go through. Now, every grade at CES has 5 classrooms. Not only that, the students in each classroom keeps going up each year. So a student to teacher ratio with 4 classrooms per grade in 2019 would have been lower than what we have in 2026 with 5 classrooms per grade. That's how much this school in particular has started to grow. And the reason that, and this is another question that was asked, why does the overflow, why does CES always have to shoulder the burden? The other buildings, Willow and COH, are much older. They're not, they simply don't have the capacity. There's no way to even creatively come up with more space. CES has had more space, but now it's maxing out. You can't keep adding more classes and expect there to be more classrooms to put them in. Eventually you run out of space. That's where we're hitting now, and that's the impetus for this plan. At COH, this would be adding a cafeteria addition, and again, renovating that space to add some classrooms. It would be in the back of the building there. And this is the middle school. So the part we're focusing on is the top right. So that's the B and the C wing. So you would be connecting those. It would kind of like adding space at the back of the building and then connecting the 2 wings. And in that connection, you would be building space to add 3 classrooms. So that would be jutting out. If you're looking at the bus loop from Main Street, that would be on your right-hand side. Okay, now what would the athletic field portion of this look like? Again, this is the potential tax increase propositions that would be on top of the tax neutral work. And what are the options here? Well, at Cornwall Central High School, you could relocate the baseball and softball fields and then basically turf it. In the process of doing that, you could create in the outfield, which you'll see in a second, where the 2 would merge, enough space for a multi-sport field for soccer, lacrosse, things like that. At the middle school, 2 options. You could add turf to the existing football field and then replace the track around it. Or you could kind of do the same thing as the high school. You'd build a multi-sport athletic field for baseball, soccer, lacrosse, football, etc., which you'll see in a second. So this is what the imprint would look like at Cornwall Central High School. So you'll see where the fields are currently, and you'd be moving the baseball field to like reversing the softball field essentially, and then having that multi-sport athletic field. You see the outline. I don't know if it's coming through on the video, but the space for the multi-sport field would be in the outfields that connect the baseball field and the softball field. That would be $14 million. And for orientation, that's the soccer fields to the right, and then the football field to the upper right. So you're getting closer to the building there with those fields. And then at the middle school, these are the 2 options. So that's the existing football field footprint at the bottom left, and that would be what that new baseball field / multi-sport would look like. So occupying the same footprint as the existing baseball field, but then in the outfield, you would just be turning that into a multi-use turf space. I want to stress that when we talk about these propositions, I got the formatting a little messed up there. We're not saying it's like all or nothing. These are the options. So we're trying to get a sense of what does the community support, where are the priorities, et cetera. So when we say 2 fields at the middle school, we're not saying we would do both. We're just getting a sense of where support generally lies. Okay, so to review the numbers here, I apologize, it got a little skewed, but the tax neutral prop would be $44 million. That's what's scoped, what I just shared with you now, with the understanding we'd likely be able to add about $10 million to that. The tax increase, the classrooms proposition, currently there's about $21 million of those 3 options would total $21 million, and those 3 fields would total $33 million. But again, we could pick and choose and kind of construct this really any way that the community decides. Okay, so speaking of community input, we had a survey that we pushed out a few weeks ago, and we got some pretty good results. There were 264 responses. Great majority were parents of Cornwall Central School District kids. We asked, how likely are you to support a capital project that does not increase local school taxes? 81% highly likely, 13.6 somewhat likely. So combined, you're north of 90%. Again, this is among parents. We shared it out in other ways, but I understand when a school creates a survey, they're more likely to get parents that respond. So we considering this when we look at this data. But then we asked to rank the areas you would like to address in order of priority. This probably looks a little confusing. I'll share a simplified version of this in a second, but I think it's good to see the raw data. So blue is upgrading infrastructure, red, student safety, the bus loop, orange, adding classroom space, green, improving the athletic fields. The upgrading the infrastructure was the clear #1 choice. When people ranked that #1, it was by a landslide. And for those, they also ranked #2 as adding classroom space. Then for those who added, this is now choice #2, for whom classroom space was their #1, infrastructure was their #2. Safety, bus loop, that kind of stuff was #3. Athletics was #4. For those for whom the safety, bus loop stuff was #1, classroom space was #2. Aging infrastructure was actually in 4th on that, which is interesting. And the fields were 3rd. And for those that valued the fields most, safety, bus loop was #2. It's kind of inverted, frankly. Classroom space was 3rd, and infrastructure was 4th. So just interesting how different groups shake out. Ultimately, though, if you rank out what were people's top choices, by the vast majority of top choices was upgrading aging infrastructure, plumbing, roof, alarm systems. The second was adding classroom space. Third was that bus loop, and 4th was the athletic fields. So interesting results. Which area would you be likely to support if it required a modest tax increase? So this goes exactly to the question that we were just talking about, or well, I'm the only one talking, but about the extra propositions and like what would the community support. So 33%, that's the blue one, would support adding classroom space to our elementary and middle schools. 25.8% would support improving both or adding both classroom spaces and improving athletic facilities. So combine those two, the classroom space has, on this poll, almost 60% support with a small taxing or modest tax increase, I'll say. Improving just the athletic facilities for a tax increase, about 12%, and neither was a 25.8, which is frankly an opinion I understand. Maybe your top option isn't on there, so that would make sense. Okay, so what are the next steps? I know that was a lot of information, and for those that are still with me mentally and physically, thank you. But where are we going from here? So the Board of Ed has to decide which projects to include and then submit paperwork to SED, which is the State Education Department. There's a whole process that they need to go through, that they need a few months to, it needs to be submitted a few months in advance of your vote. So that deadline is coming up, so which is why we've had this survey and we're having this forum, really interested in getting a sense of where the community lies. And again, over the long term, the vote is May 19th. So the way the process will go, we'll decide which projects to continue to pursue, submit that to SED, and then sometime in March, John, keep me honest, we, the board would vote for what is actually going to be on the proposition. So there's still time between now and, let's say, mid to late March, where the board would decide what is actually going to be on the ballot on May 19th. And that's the first very important decision, because those are the true options that the community will have to decide. Okay, which brings us to Q&A. Talks a lot about how we're interested in getting public feedback, and then I keep talking, which seems disingenuous. So this is the chance for the public to tell us what they think. Potential things you could say is, tell me again how this doesn't impact taxes, or when it could impact taxes. It seemed a little confusing. You want to know how the projects were chosen. Maybe you want to voice your opinion on whether you would support classrooms and/or fields with a tax increase, or anything else you'd like. We have some questions that were submitted through the survey, which we can get to in a second, but I want to give a chance to anybody who's in the audience right now. If you have a question, we're all ears.
Thank you. Greg Roby, Mineral Springs. These are numbers so that I can think clearly. What is the total student population? What are the populations at each of the 3 elementary schools? And what is the student population at the middle school? And the reason my question is being asked, I'm looking at optimizing student psychological needs and school populations as we move forward. And as background, which I mentioned the other night at the board meeting, it is plausible that rather than putting money into our oldest buildings, they could be taken down and we could build 2 additional middle schools and then reduce the addition to this school, which would bring it more in alignment. I know that's not going to happen this time around, but if those other numbers are, anybody has them, total student population at each of the buildings. Yep. Thank you.
So our total population, we have 2,966 students as of January 28th, 2026. At the high school, we have a total of 1,004 students. The middle school is 901 students. CES, this building houses 589 students. Willow Avenue is 226. And Cornwall on Hudson is 246. Welcome.
Mr. Roby, did you have follow-ups? I know that that was the specific ask, but just wanted to be sure that you're satisfied. Yes.
That is the next question. The grade configuration is not what they were 5 years ago.
And I'll just to address a point that you made Monday and I think continue tonight, and it's a very fair point of we've got twice the student population in this building that we're sitting in at Lee Road compared to the other 2 buildings, and we're potentially looking to add on to Lee Road. And I would say that the goal there is not to add more teachers and students there. It's to service the students that are already here. As Brendan said, we've added a bunch of teachers, both through COVID funding and regular budget funding, since that COVID money has been exhausted in this building. And we now have lots of students in non-ideal locations, like converted gym teacher offices are now being used for small classroom space. So, yes. Yep.
Desperation is the mother of invention, and I don't want us to.
Yes.
So
I just wanted to just say to you and to the public, we are aware of that disparity. The building, COH, one of the things there is to expand COH as much as you can. COH and Willow are both very constrained on small properties, and they don't really lend themselves to adding more students to that building. COH would be adding a couple classrooms through this, but again, it's really to service the students that are already in this building.
I was aware that in 2022 there was like a $50 million, which I now understand, the other page, whatever that is, the state mandates, every 5 years. So we did 23 of a $50 million a list. We have a 77 million, and we're looking at doing how to figure out how to do most of it, depending on the population's votes on that in the board's decision relative to what the feedback is. I got one comment today that I will pass along because I was instructed to do it. When we passed the new high school, we went with the option of the pool, with the understanding that the public would be able to use the pool. and then the pool died, and now it's rehabbed, and this person wanted to know, why isn't the public being allowed to use the pool? So in terms of selling, that could be a question that is going to possibly come back and haunt, because the last big capital project was that school. The school, what was it, second or third gym station was approved to be the pool as a separate proposition, and it's not being allowed to be used by the population.
So I don't know. I've been on the board what feels like forever, but I have not been on since 1999. So I don't know what promises were made at the time. I would be. It seems like there's an interesting story there, and I will do my best to look into it. But none of us were privy to those conversations, so I'll have to follow up with you on that. But I will look into it. It seems like there's some interesting sleuthing that could be in my future.
Just to expand a little further with the classroom space, because I was the building principal here for six or 7 years, and the needs of our students are changing in all of our buildings. And so currently in this building, we have AIS providers, early intervention providers, related service providers, and we might have 3 or 4 staff members that are sharing one classroom. And there's a capacity around that. So we might only be able to serve 5 or 6 kids in a small group at a time. So now you're breaking that up, scheduling conflicts and so on. So that is definitely something to consider as we're looking at that 4-on-4 space. And then even earlier today at COH, I was there, and we're having AIS outside the elevator. So having that additional space for the cafeteria would lend to be, supporting kind of that small group pullout that we are increasingly needing on top of ENL space. So it's incredibly valuable to be thinking in this respect.
Anybody else? Yeah. Oh, we'll get you a mic. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I know the middle school is like 2 cafeterias. Which one would be like torn down for the classroom space?
The main cafeteria.
Main cafeteria.
So the one that would be abuts that courtyard area
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the building.
Okay.
Both.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
one that's like closer to the gym.
Both.
Oh.
So both,
So
both would get renovated.
Okay.
So both would be, so the kitchen itself, and then the 2 cafeterias, I guess you call them large one, small one, whatever, however you want to call it, will be all renovated into classroom space.
Okay.
And again, to assign, just concept-wise, we assigned art and music to those classroom space, and we are also looking at adaptive PE space for our students with special needs.
All right. Thank you.
There's also, I think we put in there conceptually bathrooms, so that we have gang bathrooms for people using our theater and the auditorium over there, so that we can isolate different parts of the building.
And then Artie, do you remember like where the locker rooms, which are now redone, they don't look anything like when you were a middle schooler, they're gorgeous. When that hallway there, that would lead to where the new cafeteria would go.
Okay. Yes, I do remember that.
So
Thank you
just
very
to,
much.
for those, here and watching at home, if you look at this part here, the light blue is the current, both cafeterias and the kitchen, and that the red space up top there would be, taking what Brendan had a picture of, which he called a parking lot. I will tell you that used to be a basketball court. Some of us graduated high school on said basketball court. So that brand new kitchen and cafeteria, and the current space, the kitchen is structurally unsound, and even if it's shored up from underneath, it's still not functional. The equipment is not right. The layout isn't right. It's just designed, 40, 50 years ago and isn't meeting today's needs. So moving that kitchen space also allows to revamp that flow and the way that works. And as Brendan said, it'll service not just this building, but 2 of the 3 elementary schools. And it, as we've said, the existing space would be turned into classrooms, rooms for band, chorus, and potentially adaptive PE and other usages.
Thank you
Yeah, when
very
you
much.
Think of how centrally located that is too. And John brought up how it would be, the early ideas would be to use it to expand the arts footprint in the middle school. That space is not only right in the middle of the building, but then it's also right next to the auditorium. So it just gives you a lot of great possibilities, while also giving the students a more, how do you say, intuitive flow, or a better experience in their new cafeteria. So this is the kind of thing where it's like, if you were building this building all over again, how would you design it? And I think it would look a lot more like what this proposition is, versus kind of the piecemeal approach that we've had, that we are have been left with.
Hi, everybody. Oscar, living in Cornwall. Thank you for the presentation. As I'm looking at some of these numbers for the athletic fields, I remember from the past project, redoing the whole high school field and putting in stands and doing a lot of the things. It came in like around $8-point-something million. And yet I'm looking at some of the numbers that I'm seeing here, and it doesn't seem like, I know there's inflation and prices go up and things like that, but it doesn't seem like we're getting quite the same amount of value that we did for the high school as we're getting for, let's say, this field right here, or the old middle school field, or redoing the softball fields in the high school. Can you speak as to why we're getting less, say, value? And also keep in mind, when we doing this bus loop, you'll see some parking spots right there near the practice field. If you could probably add a few more parking spaces, because I know it gets used a lot by the youth program, and there's always chaos and people moving in and out when they're dropping off kids and stuff like that. So that would be something I would recommend to keep in mind for when you're doing this.
Over to you.
Yeah, I think, Oscar, as you mentioned, we're dealing with cost escalations. So one thing we've talked about in the facilities committee is doing a capital project now versus doing a capital project 5 years from now. We know we're going to have cost escalation. We also know that once we start working on this particular property, we're going to have drainage issues that we're going to have to get into, and water mitigation issues. We're confident of that. There is some electrical there, although what does it look like underneath, we don't know. So as Brennan shared throughout the presentation, we could have aged electrical under there that requires upgrades. So the worst thing we could do is undersell something and say, okay, we're going to promise you X, Y, and Z, but we can only deliver X at this point. Scenario for the community, because we know this particular field gets heavily used by community youth sports, just like you mentioned. So I think your point about additional parking would be wise as well. Even if we were to add that along the roadside as pull-offs as we go along, because I think we've all seen that people just pull right up onto the grass, ride all the way up to the fence line, and voila, we're good to go. So yeah, I think coupled with a number of those issues that we're forecasting, we want to plan appropriately.
I think I'll add to that too, John. First, double down on your point of, you're not really actually looking at the price of this today in 2026. You're looking at the price of this in like 2030 when it's completed, because the price is going through, as you're building it. So really you're looking at it, 5, almost 10 years later than the other project. And you're just looking at, with the except, this one field would be a new track in the field. That's an existing footprint. It matches the footprint in the high school more or less. This other field at the middle school, that's a lot more turf there. There's just a price per square foot there. So you see all that additional baseball space. And if you go to the, this is a tricky, that's just a lot more turf right there, because you see the field, that soccer field, it's roughly the footprint of a football field, and you've got a lot of extra turf there. So that's the price on this one, as well as groundwork and drainage.
Yeah, and I'll echo the drainage on this one, and you'll also see on the left-hand side where the old baseball field is, there's a heavy kind of black line there. That's retaining walls. We have a significant drop off there. So retaining walls will cost us a lot of money to make sure that we are protecting any issues that go out that way, because our drainage does come out that way. We will have to mitigate that, and you'll see, subsurface detention areas, so we will have to take care of all of that. And I will share, this is one concept we have for these fields. As long as the square foot kind of stays the same, we can reposition these. So we're not married to the baseball field looking in this position or the softball field in that position. If we want to re-image that, we can. We just want to get a concept out for our community to see what we can do.
Anybody else? Okay, we do have some questions that were submitted, and I don't want to. I think a lot of them have been answered throughout the flow of the presentation. It was getting these questions in was helpful because I had an understanding for what people were interested in knowing. So I'll just kind of reiterate some of the themes that have been touched on, just so everyone understands, what was brought up and what has already been addressed. So one of the questions would the capital project facility upgrades include real restrooms and concessions? Yes, they have to. So that would be a mandatory. There were a number of questions about the baseball fields. I know that this has been a difficult time for the baseball program because of the issues with the field. So I think that what we've been talking about here would directly address that. Would the bond be broken into separate propositions to vote on? One for athletic fields, another for building upgrades. I think that we tackle that pretty head on. Just to reiterate, I think ultimately the logic would be, and all of this is subject to board approval, but likely you would see a proposition that would be tax neutral. So without getting as much done essentially as you can without increasing taxes. And then if there were additional propositions, it would be broken up by theme. So you'd have one that could be maybe just for classrooms, maybe one just for athletic fields. That's one path. But just so everybody is, the public, I know not everybody reads the minutes of facility meetings or goes to every board meeting, but that's I think a rough summary of where the conversation is right now. There is one question was about, and I kind of addressed this before, but feeling like some of the capital improvements is due to neglect from buildings and grounds. And this is a sentiment that I've heard in other places, and I only want to bring it up so that I can refute it very clearly. Our buildings and grounds department, I have compared their office, their facility on the middle school campus to Santa's workshop. They are the most resourceful people that you ever want to meet. Their dedication is really second to none. They are led by a truly great leader, Walter Moran, who's been knows this district probably better than anyone. He might be knows it better than anyone who's ever been in the district. I mean, certainly more than anyone who's currently in the district. And they get everything that they can out of these facilities and have been doing their best for literally decades to ensure that kids can safely show up every morning. But there are certain things that a buildings and grounds crew is simply not designed to do. Buildings and grounds crew cannot rebuild your facilities. They cannot add classroom space if your classrooms are busting at the seams. A lot of like the backflow preventer stuff, that is going to save us so much time and work, because instead of having to put Band-Aids on those repeatedly throughout the year just to keep the doors open, you would replace them once and for all, and then you can the buildings and grounds crew can start focusing on more high-level work as opposed to constantly putting out fires. So just, again, bringing it up just to clarify, but also, to understand that like any investment, it's not an expense, it's an investment. And when you make an investment, get more out of it than what you put in. And the same dynamics would be at play here. Other questions? Do outside users of the facilities actually pay fees to use them? Yes, they do. There's a whole tier system that I'm not going to bore you with, but depending on what organization you're with, if like you're a PTO level organization, then you're in a certain tier. You know, the closer you are to the school community, you may have different fees. But yes, outside organizations do pay fees to use our facilities. Sorry, I'm just going through questions that are you know, more about the baseball team, more about okay, how is it possible to do another capital project without raising taxes? I think this was addressed. I'll look to anyone else. Did we want to add anything to that explanation of tax neutral?
No, I mean, I think you said it very well, Brendan, and it's a wonderful presentation you put together. I'll just reiterate it, that we have $7.5 million of taxpayer money that we have put into 2 different capital reserve accounts. Those capital reserves are only allowed to be used to spend on capital funding. So it's, you know, taking taxpayer money and a thoughtful allocation of that. In addition to that, it's just using the expiring debt coming off of paying off the quote-unquote new high school, which is not new anymore, but it's still new in my book. So just those 2 factors combined are going to allow us to do $55 million, what you had in the slide there. So.
And one other question that was brought up was, and this is a question theme, so it was reflected in different questions, which was that we should focus more on curriculum. Just to clarify, capital projects are only for the physical plant. So as much as we would love to spend every dollar on programming, this state is not kicking in 75% of, it's literally called building aid, to fund, you know, a new French class or something like that. So that is a separate issue, and that's why you don't see any straight curriculum investments. But John, you wanted to add?
Yeah, just another comment that kept reoccurring a couple times throughout here was handicap accessibility, which I think is good. So I think the community should know that if we are upgrading it, it has to be up to handicap accessibility codes. So we recently, with the most recent project, redid the bathrooms here. You'll see that the bathrooms are nice and wide and handicap accessible. So anytime we do paving or curbing projects, that will all be handicap accessible. So I just wanted to make that comment because I did see that a number of times throughout the questions here.
Great. So last call for anyone else who's here for questions. Maybe change your mind. Okay. So final bit and just like next steps, I would just encourage anyone who is watching this, whether it's right now, whether it's in a few days, you've now seen what the board, the facilities committee is considering. Please, our email addresses are on the website. Reach out to us. If you have opinions, if you have further questions, you have preferences based on what you've seen, we would love to hear about it. And again, we encourage you to continue to follow meetings. Our next meeting is February. It's February Monday. It's this Monday, February 9th. So yeah, that's another opportunity to come out and get your voice heard. All right, with that,
Can I just second
please.
that?
Yeah.
And just say, you know, I think Brendan kind of summed up, you know, where we are with this project. We are not finalized. Final decisions do need to be made within the next month. Most of that work is going to happen in the next week here, and that's going to happen tomorrow night at a facilities committee meeting, CCHS, room A21 at 7 p.m. So that's tomorrow night, Thursday the 5th. And as Brendan said, Monday the 9th at 7 p.m. here in the Lee Road Auditorium. So we certainly welcome your comments. You know, come out to the board meeting next Monday. If you really want to dig into the nitty-gritty facilities committee will be next week. I would say probably the biggest thing we're looking at, the way that we plan to structure this, the current thinking is to do that revenue neutral portion. As Brendan said, there's another 21 million of classroom. That would be a second proposition on the ballot. Some of that 21 million will be pulled into the Proposition 1 and still be revenue neutral, no tax increase, as we got some great financial news this week. And then a Proposition 3 will be athletics. So let us know, athletics supporters, if you would want to see this high school concept or one of the middle school concepts, because that's something that we're definitely looking for community feedback. So if you have strong feelings, either way, please come out and see us at one of those two meetings, or as Brendan said, email us. You can email just boe@cornwallschools.com. We'll go to all the Board of Education members. So we certainly welcome those thoughts.
And with that, thank you, everybody. Good night, and we'll see you soon.